Hello and welcome to the Happy Little Futures podcast. Let's begin as always with a nice deep breath in and release. Fantastic. So before I get going good and proper, I wanted to tell you a bit of exciting news that I've got, which is that the Happy Little Futures podcast has got its first ever sponsor. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about them before we get going. So Rowan Fox is an organic clothing brand for kids who love animals. It was founded by my artist friend Pamela, and she created Rowan Fox to provide colourful nature-inspired clothing that's ethically made and sustainable. Any clothes that you buy are produced in renewable powered factories and are sent to you in plastic-free packaging, which is fantastic with the way that everyone's worried about the earth nowadays. So you can go and explore her beautiful collection of hoodies and t-shirts and much more at rowanfox.com. I have previously posted, if you haven't seen, some pictures of the mugs as well that my kids had for Christmas, which are absolutely gorgeous. And there's so much on there. She is so talented. So definitely go and have a look at rowanfox.com and see if there's anything that tickles your fancy. And I will be posting a link in the details of this podcast so that you can easily access that and her socials. So thank you very much, Rowan Fox. So moving on slightly, this week is Men's Mental Health Week. And I actually didn't know this until yesterday, which I feel actually, as we're halfway through the week, says a lot about sort of the support and stuff and the conversations around men's mental health. I am obviously not a man. I've spoken a lot about maternal mental health. However, there are men in my life, friends and people like that have struggled with their mental health. And there does seem to be, why, I'm not particularly sure. And I think it is decreasing. There seems to be a bit of a stigma around men's mental health. It seems that now there are more people talking about it, which is fantastic. However, I don't feel that necessarily the conversations are ongoing and actually learning to recognise maybe when someone is struggling can be quite difficult. And so I've got my own personal experiences around this, which, as it's not only my personal experience, I'm not overly comfortable sharing right now. But I wanted to share with you a book that I've recently read. It's a fantastic book. A friend of mine, I was talking to her and she was saying, I was reading this book, I was reading that book, and I went round and had a look and I was like, can I try this one and this one and this one? And she lent me this particular book and said, it's such a fantastic insight into how people feel, how men can feel when struggling with mental health issues. So I borrowed it, and it's called Reasons to Stay Alive, and it's by Matt Haig. So I know last year, I think it was, he released a book called The Midnight Library, which you may or may not have heard about. At the time, we were using Audible for our kids, and it kept coming up as a suggestion for us. And I've since found that actually, since I finished reading Reasons to Stay Alive, we went and saw my mother-in-law, and I was looking at her bookshelves and spotted The Midnight Library by Matt Haig, and I sort of said, can I borrow this, because I've just finished reading Reasons to Stay Alive. And I said, where did you get it? And she said, you bought it for me for Christmas. So that shows how much attention I was paying to what I was doing around Christmas time. But that as well is an absolutely fantastic book. There are so many things that I like about this. So, as I said, it's by Matt Haig, it's about Matt Haig, and it's to do with his journey through depression and anxiety. It's written in the first person from his personal experiences, the way that things suddenly crept up on him, and sort of maybe some of the flags as well that he saw throughout his lifetime in retrospect, which I think is really helpful, especially as sort of a woman recognizing some of those little things in the background that might actually be going on. However, not only is it fantastic to understand from a man's point of view, as I was reading it, there were so many things that I was reading and I was just like, this describes perfectly what I've been through. This describes perfectly where I was at however many years ago. And I just think it's an absolutely fantastic book. If you can get hold of a copy, definitely go out and read it. He talks about the feelings that he experienced and experiences throughout his depression and anxiety. But not only that sort of like mental effect, the feelings in his head, what's going on in his head, how he processed things, but the physical impact of anxiety and depression. And I think the way that he words it is absolutely beautiful. And as someone who's been through panic attacks and similar, it really brings to life how these things can affect you physically. He also talks about, I mean, I don't want to share too much, because I want you to read it because it's such a fantastic book. But he also goes into sort of then how he sort of started to challenge himself and learn to overcome his anxiety and depression on his own, which is fantastic. He talks about meditation and yoga and similar things in there too, which is really, really good. And he also talks about sort of how he was feeling in relation to his family and sort of a lack of understanding, even though they were supportive, sort of not fully having that grasp of sort of the state that he was in and how severe his anxiety and depression were at the time. And the feelings that had as well. I know from myself that as you go through anxiety or depression, you can at times sort of tell yourself that it's stupid and that it's like, what are you doing? Don't be ridiculous, things like that. And that can actually be even more damaging than the mental health aspect itself. So it's just written in such a beautiful way. Another massive thing that I liked about this book is, especially as a parent with very little time, the chapters are really short. In some instances, I'm pretty sure there's one chapter that's just one sentence. And that is it's not only a fantastic thing as a busy parent who has only just got back into reading, as someone who was diagnosed with dyslexia, as far as reading is concerned, in her 20s, and struggled until a few years ago. Well, until a few months ago, really. I hadn't actually read an adult book ever. Even at GCSE, I'd really struggled, and in the end, my mum had just sort of bought the DVD of To Kill a Mockingbird, and I just hoped that I could grab information off other people and learn through them at lunchtimes and stuff. So for me, it's quite a daunting process picking up a book. The fact that the chapters are really short, not only does it make me feel sort of quite safe and like I don't have to commit for a very long time, but also it makes it easy to put down and easy to find my space. I really should get better at using bookmarks, especially now I'm reading more. But I just haven't. And whereas I used to remember what page I'm on, sometimes I can go a few days between picking up a book and picking it up again. And my brain doesn't quite retain that 2 or 3 number page like it used to anymore. So it's a bit of a challenge. But being able to just put the book down and know that it's not very long, know that I should be able to flick through the chapters quite easily to find where I was at, knowing that I can say I have one sentence left of this chapter, and I do actually have one sentence left of that chapter because it's not very long, is a massive gift. It really makes it so much more achievable. So that is definitely a draw. And in talking about this, actually, I do want to mention the Midnight Library as well. I've read a lot of reviews and a lot of information on a lot of Matt Haig's other books. He does some fantastic kids ones too. We have got one of the kids ones. We've borrowed it from the library recently, and I'll talk about that in a second. But the Midnight Library, as with a lot of his books, sort of is written in a way from that lived experience, and the Midnight Library itself is actually quite a beautiful book. It's a very grounding book. I find myself quite often feeling a lot more grateful for what I have after reading it. And it's written with sort of the shorter chapters, and in some instances just a sentence. I feel very safe as a reader in his hands. And I mean, I'm saying it sort of makes me feel grateful and stuff like that. It's also written very gently. It's not a very heavy book. It's quite a gentle explorative, maybe that's how I say it, journey through this person's sort of experience. And again, I'm not going to give much away because it wasn't what I was expecting, and I'm loving it so far. I think I only picked it up 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I think I've only got sort of about a quarter of it, if that, left, because it's just such a fantastic book to read. So I definitely recommend that. I've nipped off and found it as well. The kids' book that we picked up from the library of his is The Truth Pixie, and it's an absolutely fantastic book. It helps with sort of understanding friendships and all of that sort of stuff. We've read it quite a few times to our eldest. She's read it to us as well, which is lovely. I'll quickly read you the blurb on the back. So it says, "Wherever she is, whatever the day, she only has one kind of thing to say. Just as cats go meow and cows go moo, the truth pixie can only say things that are true. A very funny and lovable tale of how one special pixie learnt to love herself, with words by the best-selling mastermind Matt Haig and inky pictures by the genius Chris Mould," which the pictures are absolutely gorgeous too. But yeah, it's a fantastic story about sort of someone who's a bit different, someone who's sort of struggled a bit with friendships and stuff like that. It really opens a good conversation, and it's just a beautiful book. I also like the fact that, as you could tell then, the fact that it rhymes, because I find it so much easier to read a book when it rhymes. So that's always good. But yeah, so just to introduce him as an author, and that book in particular, Reasons to Stay Alive. If you are worried about a man in your life, or anyone in your life really, that might be struggling with depression or anxiety, if you want to try and understand what they are living through and how they might be feeling physically and emotionally, and how you can help them, then definitely get a copy of that book and give it a read, or give it a listen if you want to listen to it on Audible. I'm sure it's on there. I haven't looked, so don't take my word for that. But definitely give them a look over, because it's just a beautiful book. It's absolutely fantastic, and the way in which it creates understanding of what a man or a woman might be going through. I've never seen or read anything like it, really. And so on this Men's Mental Health Awareness Week, as someone who's not a man, and I felt I wanted to speak about it today, I wanted to bring up men's mental health. I wanted to recognise that it is something that's ongoing, something that a lot of people struggle with. Suicide is one of the biggest killers of men under the age of 50 in the UK. And in knowing that, it is something that I think a lot of people want to try and figure out how they can help, how they can recognise more easily when there is a problem, when someone might be struggling. Obviously, it comes across differently in many different people. In some instances, it might be that they mask a lot and there's this okay, happy exterior. I saw a really powerful video a few weeks ago, which I'm annoyed now that I can't remember what it was for, but it was two male friends at the football. One looked quite down, and the other one was happy and excited every week, and they sort of keep coming back to these games, and the one looking down gets further and further down, and you can see that in his face and everything. The other one's sort of like trying to pick him up and stuff, and then at the end it's sort of like checking on your mates, and it's the friend that was sort of up and cheering and all of that sort of stuff that's gone at the end of it. And I just think it's such a powerful message, because you don't know who's struggling and you don't know what's going on. But this book in particular, like I said, I think it provides a fantastic insight. If you're looking to understand a bit more of lived experiences, if you're looking to understand a little bit more of what someone might be feeling on the inside and maybe how you can support them, I would say, from my experience, patience is a big thing that can help. And it's sometimes hard and it's sometimes frustrating as someone supporting someone going through that. But I think patience does have to come into it. And the fact that they might not recognise necessarily where they're at themselves too. So, which again, like I said, he looks back in this book and says, oh, looking back at this point, yes, I was struggling with this, but I didn't recognise it as that. So I just think it's a fantastic book. I think everyone should read it. To be honest, it's a nice, easy read, and it's interesting, and it definitely can provide you with both a feeling of understanding, a feeling of comprehension as to those sort of inner feelings and physical feelings, and also help you to feel less alone, whether it's you going through it or whether it's you trying to support someone going through it. I think it's a fantastic book to read. So on that note, that is my book review. I never thought I'd do a book review, but that is my recommendation for you this Men's Mental Health Week, is look out for that book. I'll say it again, it's Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Haig, and get yourself a copy, read it and find out more and build your knowledge. And once again, thank you to Rowan Fox for sponsoring this episode. And if you take a look in the notes, I will link to her socials and to her website so that you've got the information there. And finally, we're going to take a deep breath in and release. And have a wonderful week.